Welcome to the Vital Times podcast for the California Society of Anesthesiologists. I'm Dr. Ludwig Lin. Today, I get to discuss the ways we can shape our careers in anesthesiology with two distinguished experts in career development. Dr. Daryl Oakes, a professor of anesthesiology at Stanford University School of Medicine and its Associate Dean of Postgraduate Medical Education, and Dr. Beth Duggan, a professor of anesthesiology and the Vice Chair of Faculty Development at University of Alabama at Birmingham. I'd like to welcome both of our speakers. Thank you so much for taking the time. And the first thing I'm supposed to ask you is, any particular disclosures?
I have no disclosures. This is Daryl Oakes. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Also excited to be here, Beth Duggan. Also do not have any disclosures today.
Great, thank you. Let's get this started. So we want to talk about shaping our careers and job crafting. And the first question I'm going to throw at you guys is, what attracted you to this space in the first place? And we'll start with Dr. Oakes.
Well, I think it was my own personal journey of trying to figure out how do I fit in to this field. I think that has been a experience from early on. I wanted to be a cardiac anesthesiologist. There weren't a lot of women in cardiac anesthesia, and think I had to spend a lot of time figuring out how do I get to be me in an environment where not a lot of people looked like me. I went on to have 4 children, and that is unheard of. And I was just doing it differently. And I think I had to learn how to do things in a way that worked for me personally. And I got a lot of satisfaction out of it. And it was something that I then wanted to share with other people because I wanted all of them to feel like they belong in this field and figure out ways that it would work for them.
I think a similar path for me, that you're exploring the way that you exist in your space. I happen to be a division chief, when I was helping to kind of oversee about 28 people, and just kept thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, yes, I can staff rooms. Sure, I can put people where they belong so we can make the ORs run every day. But is that really what a division chief should be doing? Should that be my role? Is that all I do? And I really came up wanting people to feel excited and joyful and passionate about the different experiences that they had, over the course of the day, over the course of the month, the year. And so long story short, I found organizational psychology and went back and got a degree because that really, is a way to learn more about motivation, engagement, fulfillment. And since then have just loved the topic, have gone down every rabbit hole, probably related to many of the things we're going to talk about today. As a way to just have a better understanding of how people exist in their workforce, and equally importantly, how can the workforce shift to engage the people that really sustain what it is that we do.
Thank you. I feel like this is such an important topic, and it's something really important for our listeners to consider, because just listening to both of you, thinking about how to be somebody in this space, and then acquiring the skills to help others be in this space. I think there's a time when somebody's really busy trying to just be good enough to be in this space. But then all of a sudden you're there, thankfully. And then what's the next step? And it's good to be intentional and intelligent about it. And I also wanted to make sure that we mentioned this. It's a very strange time, I think, to be in the field of anesthesiology, because let's face it, we're very much wanted. The workforce is desperately short of anesthesiologists in both academics and in private practice. So basically, we can get jobs wherever with very good pay. But is that all? Is that all there to it? To get a job? What happens when you're in that job for a couple of years, right? And then how do you actually not just have a title, but actually do something with it that is going to keep you in that job? And for me, I guess that is the fundamental question I have in today's conversation, is how do we find meaning in whatever job we have within anesthesiology, and how do we shape it? How do we amend it so that it is fulfilling and sustainable? And maybe it doesn't have to be sustainable. I don't know. You could, just grab the money and run, I guess. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of where anesthesiologists are right now. Back to you guys.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. I mean, I do think we have to maybe start a bit with what the mindset that we've been trained into. I think we've been trained into a mindset that there are things we're supposed to do. There's someone we're supposed to be. There's a lot of shoulds, and I think we got usually into our roles in our jobs because we're really good at following expectations and exceeding them, but they were expectations set by other people. And I think one of the difficult things for people at all stages, I think, of career life is realizing how important that mental shift is, that it's no longer about achieving some other metric outside of you. And I think for people maybe in some of the academic centers, they keep feeling like there's some bar they're supposed to meet, but I think it's it is there, but it's different than maybe they think, and they have a lot more control than they may realize they have over deciding what that means, and that their job and the way to be successful once you're in practice is actually much broader, and it's a lot more. There's a lot more flexibility than I think we're maybe led to believe, or we are allowing ourselves to believe. So I just maybe want to start with that thought.
I agree completely. On the pressures of performance, right? The pressure of becoming good at what we do, of having this body of expertise, right? We train people not to make any type of mistake, right? To really be our best every single moment. And on top of it, the pressures of I can't say no. Like I have to show up even if I'm, really sick or my child is in distress, but I need to be publishing more papers. And oh my gosh, I haven't given a lecture in the last 6 months. And I think likewise in private practice, there's a lot of pressure for production. And there's a lot of pressure for, managing any case and the case variety and just the motion of every day. And, to Dr. Oakes' point, that you get lost very quickly and I think very early, right? You're maybe 3-4 years in and all of a sudden you're realizing I don't enjoy my job maybe as much as I thought I would. Right. And there is a fair amount of money in it. So you've used, and I mean this in a very good way, you've used the money that you've long not had, right? You're finally paying off your medical school debts. You finally don't feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck with, $6 in your bank account. But there becomes, I think, to your point, Dr. Lynn, the word you use that I love is intentionality, right? We've lost that intentionality and Dr. Oakes' word, agency over our own careers. And then the system maybe gets the best of us and you do lose a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. So I think this is where, when we talk about it early, about let's be intentional and let's give you some agency and give yourself permission to have agency over your career because, as Dr. Oakes said, it's your career. It's not anybody else's. And so setting your own goals and your own expectations and meeting those and maybe even surpassing those will more likely give you joy than trying to live up to some system expectations that maybe, don't belong to you.
And I would even argue are not even useful. I think that they have a purpose, but they are maybe not the best purpose. They're there for all sorts of reasons. So I guess I would encourage people to think beyond them and, out of that box and not allow ourselves to be sort of stuck in those boxes. I always think these boxes didn't fit me. I don't know who they do fit. I'm curious to find the people for whom those boxes fit. And so how to give ourselves permission to step out of them and create our own spaces.
Okay, let's do that. Let's talk about how to create our own space. So it sounds like the first thing we need to do is we need to ditch these external expectations and the metrics and sort of really look within ourselves and come up with our own list. I mean, even saying those words is kind of scary. So, because that requires some insight and some self-examination. So I'm going to throw it back to the two of you. You're my experts at this, like how, and I know that Beth for sure coaches people, and Daryl is the associate dean for medical education. So this is what you guys do when you sit down and you chat with somebody um, in their journey. How do you go about analyzing this? Please share.
Well,
No, Dr. Oakes, you go first.
yeah. I mean, I sort of like to think of things in three buckets, and I think that it sometimes takes some time for us to remember what we care about. We've been so good at activating on what other people care about, but really going back to what we're passionate about and really thinking what are the things that we care about, what is meaningful to us, and how do we give it value again? How do we remember that that is actually the most important thing? So, really spending some time to re engage with what we are passionate about. And I've had these conversations with people and they often say, well, that's not important. And I said, what are you talking about? How could it not be important? If it's important to you and it's meaningful to you, it's incredibly important. And I said, the next piece is to think about if something's important to you, you probably have a sense that there's something out there that's missing that probably relates to that thing you're passionate about. Where is this unmet need or this gap in the world that you see, or maybe you've experienced yourself, that sort of intersects with this passion that you have? And those are that's a very tangible and important area of focus. I will say we work within organizations. And so it is important to think about when you're thinking about what that passion and that sort of unmet needs space is, that thing that needs to be created or that you needed that other people probably need. You need to think about it. How can we frame it and think of it within this organizational structure I work in so that it could be supported? And so I try to have people think in these three buckets: your passion, an unmet need, and then how do you link and align that with something that you can see the organization caring about? Because that's how you'll get support for it in your work environment. And it doesn't mean you couldn't do it. It will be easier to do it within your work environment if you solve that third piece.
I agree almost 100%. So that's very similar to my approach. Is really a lot of exploration around what brings you value, right? What brings you passion. I often have people list what are like the 10 or 12 things you spend over the course of your week or your month doing. And then we rate them. How much value does this have to me? Right. And so people can really understand, like, to your point, Dr. Oakes said, they say that's not really important. But yes, when you can put a number on it and you say, hey, this is a 5 and this is a 1, all of a sudden people are like, oh, that does have value for me. So finding that through some self-exploration. And then I spend some time in what I call job design, right? If there were a job that looked like this, what would it be? And very similar to what Dr. Oakes said, how does that design exist in our organization, in our department? Because like she's saying, right, if you can align it with the organization, right, if the department or the School of Medicine or you're in private practice, your group, right, your hospital needs some piece of that role, you're much more likely to get support for it. I think that comes very easily for some people asking for that. And some people, right, especially early career, becomes a little bit more intimidating. So when we go through a formal job crafting process in my department, I say to people as we're going through, do you want to let our chair know that this is what you want? And we can come up with a proposal together. Do you want me to go forward and say, hey, I've gone through this process with this person. Here's all their strengths. Here's what I think they bring to the department. Here's what they're very passionate about. Here's our role proposal. Or do we do it together? And most people want to do it together, truth be told, right? We're advocating for them together. But I think it gives people permission to feel that they're very supported in asking for something, because I think that's another part of medicine is we're kind of taught not to ask. Like, don't ask for something, right? Don't be that squeaky wheel. But again, I think presented the right way, very much like what Dr. Oakes is saying, presented that this also benefits the organization I work for. It's amazing. We've done this with 6 or 7 roles in the last 2 years in my organization. All have been highly successful. And, we have these people really excelling, and they've gone from, I would say, some level of burnout to some level being the more productive faculty in the department because we've just found their purpose. And so I think people need to feel like you don't need to ask permission to do this. You're doing good by yourself and you're doing good by the people that you work with.
I love that. Dr. Duggan, I think, touched on something that I think is sort of maybe universal. And I think this was the Institute of Work retention report from 2022. And they sort of surveyed, this is the workforce generally, so outside of medicine, but they were looking for the top 5 reasons people left their job. And the top one by far, like 22% of people said it was because they had no clear career path. And interestingly, money's on there too, but it's number 5. And it's, 9% of people said it was a money problem. So, I mean, money's important, but I do think not having sort of a purpose or a path forward is very challenging for people. And realizing that there is an ability to create that path yourself. And I think maybe no longer waiting for someone to hand it, the sort of, I don't know, it's the tiara thing where are you waiting for someone to anoint you that you are ready and that you are deserving? And I think that it's really hard to realize that now you have to be the one who comes forward and sort of makes the suggestion and creates that now the most effective way to get what you actually want is to sort of be the initiator.
Well, I just wanted to summarize for our listeners that I think what both of you are saying is you got to find what you're passionate about. So you do have to take the time to do that and find your jam, as they say. But then you need to gather support for it. And you do need to be somewhat savvy in making sure that it aligns with your department or your institution so that people will support you getting that done. Right? So,
yeah, I will just add to that. It's a win-win that I think people often, well, why would they do that for me? And I was like, well, you're going to be doing something for them too. There's a win-win, and that there's a value add to the organization for you to be engaged, for you to bringing things forward as well. So I think that there's an opportunity there.
And I think that's exactly what we sell the organization is that your most engaged, your most passionate humans are the most productive. And this has been well demonstrated in the organizational literature. Their performance is higher. Their citizenship behaviors, right? My willingness to go above in my job, right, go up. My effective commitment, my desire to stay with my organization goes up. So, right, these people want to stay. They're willing to go above and beyond, and their performance is higher because you've given them some route to achieve their passion. You can't say it better than what Dr. Oakes said. It's a win-win.
I will say there is a group of people, and I will say maybe when we get to mid-career, people who felt like they may have done what we're talking about already. They've thought of what they wanted to do, and they've been working really hard, but they don't feel seen. And they don't feel recognized for what they've done, or they feel like, well, nobody thinks what I'm doing is important. And they don't know how to advance further. Again, this is really important for those times too, is to sort of take a step back. And often this is something that's very hard to do alone. So it's something to do with a coach or some sort of peer that you can trust, or you have, a mentor. But really take a step back and look, okay, what is the landscape now? Go back to those principles. What excites you? Again, where do you see the needs? And again, maybe help you find that alignment, because if you're not feeling recognized, it may be because somehow there might be a better way to create alignment with what you are trying to do. And it's not because what you're doing is not important. It may not be seen or recognized for what you're doing. There may be a little bit of a need to create some visibility. But again, it's not because you are not important. And I think that sometimes we feel that way at those moments in our career. So,
and I think a good place to really think about being mid-career faculty is it is a challenging time. I think all of us as mid-career felt lost at some point. Like, I've put the energy, I've put the time, I've done the projects, like I've done the good ones and I've done the ones that I wasn't so excited about. Like, I've been a good citizen of this place. But a little bit is learning to advocate for yourself also in those moments, because the department is big or the community practice is big. There's 30 or 40 or 140 people working there. And I don't think that I like to believe, right? Nobody's trying to overlook you. I think everyone has very good intent and we want to value our people. But we have to give some credit to some of our leaders that they can't keep up with what you do every single day. So redrawing attention to it, having those open conversations of like, these are the things I'm doing. This is what I've accomplished. This is where I'd like to go. And I think, to Dr. Oakes' point, maybe having a coach help you with that conversation it's valuable. And again, advocate for yourself, be your own agent. I realize that's hard. We are not taught in medical school to be our own agent, right? We're taught to follow instructions and to keep your head down and work 72 hours in a row and never complain. But the reality is the system has gotten large. And I think it's gotten larger and larger over the course of my career, knowing you both, your careers as well. And so, the game has changed a little bit, and it is okay to change with it, right? One-sided change isn't beneficial to any of us.
I totally want to second that. As you were talking, I was thinking, the healthcare environment has changed so much. For anesthesiologists, we have gotten so necessary that our groups are huge. Academic departments are huge with multiple campuses. These private practice groups are huge. And I think the easiest thing for the leaders to do is to just let things be, right? Status quo. Like if you're a contributor and you're a good team player and you're good at what you do, awesome. Let's just move on to the next crisis. So what you're both saying is if somebody has goals and dreams and designs for a particular type of job, you really need to advocate for yourself, speak up, and go be heard, right?
I think so. And I will also say we also maybe have to take a step back and maybe think more broadly about the things we're trying to do and want to do. Because, I know that within a certain group or a certain organization, we often get stuck thinking about opportunities to support or work or contribute to specific roles that either already exist or kind of right there in front of you. And I think that it can be very, very disappointing if you want a specific role and then someone else gets it, right? And I think that's actually a huge source of mid-career frustration in that you're ready for that next role, but there's only one, right? And not everybody can have it. And when you aren't the one chosen for it, it can be very demoralizing. And you can think, well, maybe I'm just not good for anything. And I think that's a really important moment to take a step back and say, okay, wait, I have a lot of skills. And there are a lot of ways to use it. And this is just one particular way. And I think what I found was useful to do in my own career was actually think horizontally across organizations. Is there another place? Is there another space where maybe I can find an opportunity that other people aren't looking at that might provide me the same opportunities to grow and develop that I might not be able to do within this one space. So, and I think that I looked beyond my division and department and looked at the medical school, and I found, opportunities to work. And I have my associate dean role now. So I think that I think it's very important for us to realize that sometimes we overly narrow what our options are. And sometimes you need a little help and to get, okay, what really could I do? And does it all have to fit in these already prescribed roles, or maybe there's a new role that needs to be made? And I think that's something that Dr. Duggan is very good at helping people think about when you're doing your sort of work with them as they're sort of crafting new roles for themselves in job crafting.
Yeah, this is a really nice segue for us to ask Dr. Duggan a little bit more about job crafting, because it's a formal construct. So how much of what we've talked about fits into that, and what are the elements that we've missed so far about that?
So job crafting, it is a construct in the organizational literature. Was actually, really put forward more than 40 years ago by two organizational psychologists, Jane Dutton and Amy Zivnitsky. There's actually some work being done by a guy at University of Michigan named Justin Berg, who actually his sister is an anesthesiologist, which I love because I think, wow, like this is, she knows a lot of this literature, and it's really fun that her brother is such a contributor. So it really was, created out of three components. Task crafting. Am I doing the tasks every day that I enjoy doing? Relational crafting. Am I working with a community or a group of people or certain people that I have a relationship with, that I derive joy from being in their presence and having kind of this, for lack of a better word, maybe some team, sensation. And then what we call cognitive crafting. Do I see my work as serving a greater purpose? And I think this, if you look at that, right, you can see a lot of where that falls apart in anesthesiology. If you are an OB anesthesiologist and you're staffing OB once a month, you may not feel like I'm doing the task that I really trained to do. I love this. And yet, right, I'm in a busy practice where I don't do it as often as I want. Or relational crafting. Every time somebody says to me, hey, anesthesia, I think, oh, there we go. Loss of relational crafting right there. Because this means somebody doesn't know my name. We don't have a relationship. We're not, really working together. So can we create environments where we know each other better and we know this works, right? We all hear when people say, oh, I'm on the liver transplant team and I love my liver transplant surgeons, right? And a lot of that is because we're building relationships, right? We know these people incredibly well. And then cognitive crafting. And I think this is really a shift in anesthesia, at least since I've been practicing, which, as faculty is 15 years now, is this idea of I'm a cog in the wheel, right? Like I can't really see how what I do contributes to this greater purpose, right? I put people to sleep. I wake them up. Nobody really appreciates what I do every day. And if I didn't show up tomorrow, they'd find somebody else to do my job. And that's very disenfranchising. So again, cognitive crafting is really being able to show people there is purpose in your work. You are serving something much larger than yourself. And so those are the three kind of main components of job crafting. So if you're looking at those things and you're trying to figure out ways to incorporate those, there's some pretty good evidence that pattern is more likely to help you feel a sense of work meaning. And really job crafting was designed to increase work meaning. And so those are kind of the theories. I also tell people that a lot of that came out of even earlier, right, theory that's called job characteristics theory, which again, not to dig into all the details, but just to say there's a lot of science behind job crafting and job characteristics theory that has been demonstrated in the literature for more than 50 years. That shows us if you're willing to take a risk and do these things, we know there's positive outcomes for the way you feel about your work and the way that you interact with your work, the way you perform, the way you give, the way you experience your relationships. So, I think it's worth people's time. We believe in science so heavily as physicians. And I think we forget sometimes that the rest of kind of what we consider softer sciences also has a lot of data to support what we're suggesting people do.
I love that. I think I always think a lot about, sort of how do we sort of help ourselves re-engage with our own agency. I think we often feel disempowered in our work environments. And I think it's a important opportunity for us to think, okay, what do I actually have control over? And that you actually have a lot more power than you realize. We work in these organizations that are complex and decisions get made that we have no control over. Things are happening in the greater medical environment that is, distressing. But I think we actually have a lot of control over sort of our proximal space, our immediate interactions. We can choose to sort of have a positive interaction with the patient that we're having, in front of us. We can work to develop a sort of positive community. And, I think it was actually just a couple of weeks ago that I, sort of realized that several of people in my group have cats, right? So we started a cat chat, and I thought this is silly. But interestingly, it's sort of fun to have these micro communities, right? I don't have to do anything, but for someone sends me a photo of this. And I think it's those sort of micro moments of connecting that really can be very helpful. Especially, I think we've become so disconnected in the last few years, and our work environments are getting bigger and more anonymous. I think we actually are going to maybe have to be more intentional about creating those connections, but it's very powerful how those can help sort of keep your energy level and your emotional sort of sense of yourself kind of upright in these environments that can then allow us make more and make more of the environment, enjoy it more, use our really amazing professional skill set to the advantage of other people, and to really feel proud of it. So again, just sort of along the same lines as job crafting, where are our senses of proximal control? How can we take agency back for just our lives and our experience of our work?
Yeah,
Let's talk
I'd
about what
agree.
happens when we don't have this, like when we don't have a sense of purpose, when we don't have a sense of passion, when we don't have a sense of community.
Well, I mean, the data
What happens
definitely says
then?
without a sense of purpose, not only, right, do we experience negative workplace, kind of psychological states, burnout, distress, we also experience almost a loss of identity. So purpose is considered one of the foundational needs of humans. I believe that what I do, the work I do, the people I talk to, serves a greater purpose, which is kind of interesting that we all need that. We want that. We desire that. It gives us, really a sense of, Maslow's, pyramid has since been disproved multiple times. But the point of it is, right, when you got to this top, I'm serving this higher need, I have this higher purpose, that has been repeated in the literature since, right? That they're, in more kind of modern theory. And so again, it's disenfranchising at work, but it's disenfranchising to self-identity.
I'm going to think about that one a little bit more. But what, Dr. Duggan, what do you say to somebody who says, "Well, I'm just going to put my head down, work a lot, get those billable hours, get a lot of money"?
Oh, I get this one a lot these days. And frankly, I hear this, which is hard for me. And again, Dr. Oakes, you probably have a different experience, right? Or you're talking to different people, right? I'm really very, I would say, anesthesiology specific in my department, but also in the specialty. I hear it a lot from the residents coming out of residency, and then our early career faculty, right? Money has become, I think, is driving force, right or wrong. And we talked about this a little earlier, but you do need money. You need to feel that someone is giving you a fair exchange for the work that you are providing. But it always makes me, disheartened, sad, disappointed, right? That they have had a work experience that has said, you know what, I'm so devalued, I'm so underappreciated, that I'll just take the money and run, right? Like Steve Miller Band. So I think, that's where we have to step in as an organization. Really, that's where we have to provide people that you can come to, I hope, and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like I'm not feeling valued here. The only thing I get out of this is a paycheck. That is intervention point 101. Time to have a conversation about how we can improve your job. And the reality is, you said this up front, anesthesiologists are in a shortage. You could go anywhere. So we don't want to lose anybody. That's the truth. So if we're not spending time investing in our people, when I introduce myself to our new faculty, I tell them I have the best job in this department because my job is to make your job amazing. And there's no greater privilege than to be able to help other people experience joy and meaning in their jobs. So the minute you don't have that, please come knock on my office door. Here's my phone number. Give me a text, right? Reach out via email. Because it is truly a privilege to help people find that moment, but we don't do it enough.
I will say one of my sort of biggest sadnesses sort of in our current moment is that we sort of all the changes in medicine, and these changes have been going on for a long time. I mean, I remember my parents are both physicians. My mom was an anesthesiologist, and she felt like medicine's changing to go into medicine. I did, and I went into anesthesia, but I do feel like things have become increasingly more transactional, and that we're sort of losing I think a lot of people coming into medicine maybe don't get to enjoy that same sense of the calling of the field. I hope they do. I hope we can grab that back. We can own that again, because I do think it is a pretty remarkable space that we work in. We have this incredible responsibility for other humans in these incredible environments. I mean, what we do every day is pretty profound. And I just want people to maintain the awe of what we do and get to enjoy that again. And I think that we do need to be paid for our work. We do need to have a reasonable work environment and supports for our work. But I also think nothing can pay you enough to have the emotional and physical investment that we need to do and be part of our jobs the way we do. And so I just want to make sure that we somehow support the passion, the sort of that purpose of and that wonderful value of what we get to do. Again, if we, the part that we sort of over transactionalize these works because everything's become so financially driven and everything's so metric based, that it ends up making us feel like our jobs are devalued. And I think that, Dr. Duggan, you probably have some data on this, but the sort of sense that, when you put a money value on something, it actually devalues what we do. Not that we shouldn't get paid. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need to sort of get to be able to balance that transactional nature with the reminder that we're actually doing something that's beyond what someone could pay me for. And I'm doing it beyond for what you could ever pay me enough to do.
100% true. So yes, there is data to look at this, right? What things are what we call continuous motivators that they will motivate you forever. And job meaning is one of those things. Like as long as you come back and you feel like your job is meaningful day after day, you will continue to go back to work. It will motivate you for extended periods of time over the length of a career. Money, unfortunately, it's an early motivator and it's a strong motivator. So you do need to get paid. If you're not getting paid, you're not going to work. That's the reality. Right. But at some point, it's a parabola. You get to this top point, and now you start to feel a little demotivated. Like maybe I'm not getting paid enough. Maybe I need a little more, because the problem is you've reached this top peak, but right, the money's not increasing. And so all of a sudden you're questioning, right, what is your value? When you've been rewarded with money over and over again, that's what your expectation is. I want to be rewarded with money. There's simple experiments where, you pay people for a quality metric, right? And they do it for a really long time. And then you say, oh, we've done such a good job, we don't need to pay for that anymore. And guess what? Now nobody does it anymore, right? That doesn't mean the quality metric is less important, but now you've told me it's not part of my job anymore, right? And so I don't have to do it. So again, you've motivated it in maybe a negative way. And we see that with a lot of things, right? When you pay people to lecture, the residents, they will do it. But then if you stop paying them, they're going to say, well, that's not my job anymore. Well, I mean, in academics, it might be your job. So this is not to say any payment system is right or wrong, but just to be really thoughtful about the way you pay people and what you pay them for. And on the opposite side is really thinking to yourself, right? I need so much money to feel that my job is valuable to me. Yes. But if that's the only reason I'm here, I may not feel a sense of purpose or fulfillment over the long haul because it won't sustain you. And in fact, it may demotivate you. So, food for thought as you contemplate taking jobs and keeping jobs. They did a study of young physicians. This is a few years ago now, and this is not specific to anesthesiologists. This is all physicians across the board. And they asked them, why did you choose your first job? 68% of them said money. I wanted money. And I get that, right? Because we all lived in residency and money was a stressor for a very long time through medical school and residency. And then when they resurveyed this same group of physicians about 3 years later, they said, why do you stay at your job? Well, guess what? Money was still up there, but it dropped from being about 70% of people chose money up front. Now only 40% of people are saying, I stay for the money. They were saying, I stay because I have great work-life balance, I have great culture and community, and I find meaning in my work, right? It shifted because once they realized they had the money, I think many physicians said, okay, that's great, but I'm so much happier that I have these other things, these other components to my job. And the people that found those things stayed in their jobs, and the people who didn't, even with great compensation, were more likely to either leave or express intent to leave.
No, I think that's really important to realize. And how, again, not to say people shouldn't get paid. We need to get paid for our work, and we need to get paid fairly. But I wouldn't want people to have the value taken out of it. Now, you're not paying to give someone a lecture, but teaching someone something and helping them learn, helping them see something new, or to some extent, if you're up late, right, making the lectures, that's problematic. But I think that hopefully we can help find a balance between what people get to enjoy, right, so that the enjoyment and enjoy is not only determined by how things are compensated, because unfortunately, some of the most important things we do are not compensated. And I wish they were, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't get to do them. And so I just want to find ways to help people still get their salary and get paid, but also still get to do those things that give them joy.
That is such a good point. I feel like this is where we start talking about medicine as a calling rather than as a business, because there are a lot of ways to make money, and there are a lot of ways to make a lot more money than being in medicine. And people talk about that openly now. Some people talk about how I wouldn't go back to being a physician now because I could be in programming and make so much money, or I could do whatever. I can't even make it up now. But there is something that keeps people in medicine. And somebody in finance could say, oh my gosh, I've made so much money that I am 39, I'm going to retire. Well, okay, fine. But I think both of you had said, there's something about medicine that keeps people coming back because we do really powerful things. We keep people alive. We keep them out of pain. We are teaching the younger generation of physicians. There are just so many things that we do achieve fulfillment with that are not necessarily only described in the dollar value. So I know that people are going to roll their eyes about that, but I do feel like there is a special layer of being in medicine that makes it a calling in addition to being a job. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think I just wouldn't want that taken away from people. I mean, I think that, yeah, I think, and also there's a part of me that wants physicians to take medicine back, right? I think there's a lot of sort of the assumption that, well, medicine is a business now. And I hear this in lots of forums. And I just think, well, but should it be? And yes, things have to get paid for. And yes, we're running complex organizations, but should medicine really be run with the same principles we run businesses by? And I don't think so. I mean, and maybe I'm naive, but I think that the principles for how we take care of people, there is a difference. And I want physicians to be able to take that back and take control of it and say, no, it is most important that we do X. And yes, this costs money. It means that maybe something else is less important. But these are the priorities we want to have, and I want physicians to own that again. And if the way to get there is to get people inspired again by the sort of calling of what we do, maybe that's the way to do it. And again, it's not to be taken advantage of by the system, but I think it's to take back the system and ask it and require it to do that again. Now, how do you do that? That sounds very high, whatever. But again, I think you do it in the places that are most proximal to you. Do you change the culture, small pieces of your culture? One of the activities we're doing in our center at Stanford is around pushing our beds, for decades and whatever, since I've been there, anesthesiologists push the beds. Now there's some discussion about who should be pushing the beds. And we have these complex ICU patients, and now we have bed transport helping us. And that's a small piece, but it's just these little stepwise things that we can do proximally to say, no, we need to reorient the priorities. And again, we can get bigger than that, but I think you start local.
So maybe the hashtag for this podcast can be Take Medicine Back, because I think that speaks volumes to what most physicians really desire is medicine has to be a business. Yes, right. We have to figure out how to be cost efficient and take care of the patients that we are, we should be honoring some degree of keeping the cost contained, right? And I think all of us believe that very strongly. I don't think physicians have ever said we're opposed to that. But I think there's such an and to that. And we are here to make a difference. And we are here to team with the other physicians in the room to take great care of you. And we want you to have, as positive outcome as possible, or to relieve your suffering. There's so many things we do that are far bigger than a spreadsheet, right? Than the balance, the budget kind of item. And I do think we've lost sight of that. And I think that's why a lot of us feel disenfranchised at times is, we didn't go in it to make sure the hospital made money. We went into it for, this belief that we could make a difference in people's lives. And the data says that's very driving. When you I'm going to use the word feedback, but this is not like your annual evaluation. So feedback, a patient says, "Do you thank you so much for taking care of me today?" Right? Or the surgeon says, "Hey, you know what? That case was incredibly complex and I couldn't have done it without you." Right? Or a resident said, "I had no idea about that concept and I learned a ton today and this was really fun." That drives you. That makes you feel like, yes, why I come to work is worth it. That felt so good today. And I think, again, being able to reflect that back, to, some of the business people who may not have those experiences in reality. They don't share that with us. This is not their fault. Their job was not designed to have that, but it's created a gap, right? And what we believe is great feedback is very different than what they're trained, right? Their feedback is, the balance is positive this year. And it has created, like I said, this discrepancy where we are not on the same page. And our systems do have to change, I believe. And I think a lot of the work coming out of the well-being literature, right, for the first time is really focusing on systematic change as opposed to personal change. And it requires both. We're talking a lot today about how we can change our jobs, and that is 100% true. And I think now we're alluding to culture change and system change will also be part of the ways that we solve kind of what I would consider, the problem and people feeling disenfranchised. And yes, just coming to work and putting their head down and saying, at this point, I'll just take the paycheck because there's not a lot more here for me. Which we've all said is sad. It's it's just disheartening to believe that's where we are.
Well, I think what you're saying is that we don't have to just be that.
We don't.
Right. And we get to be the action heroes, which is a concept I really like, and that we get to take medicine back. I love that about that being the hashtag of today's episode, that there are discrete steps backed by science that we can take to create a job scenario that is fulfilling and satisfying and sustainable. So, let's get to it. I really want to discuss more the various stressors in our job environment and how to make that better. But that will have to be in the next episode that I get to have with these two amazing physician leaders. So I'm just going to wrap this up now and thank both of you for being here today, and we will take up those topics at a later time. Before we sign off, though, I do want to make sure that I ask both of you whether there was something else about our conversation today that needed, to be said more. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure that we leave the listeners with?
I think I just want to tell my colleagues that you're enough. You are incredibly skilled and well trained, and you do incredible work. And it will feel at times that your contributions isn't maybe not seen, but it is. And I think I just want to encourage people to know that there are so many ways to use your gifts. And when you're feeling in those moments that might feel low, you're not the only one. And that there are so many ways, and we need your gifts. We need your skill sets. And so please, please, please sort of consider some of the things we've talked about today as options so that you can, keep giving those to the world and your patients. And we need you.
I probably can't say anything better than that. I think that's a lovely message to end on. And maybe just to say, there is a support system for each and every person here. And if you don't know where yours are, exist at the moment, please reach out, find, in academics, we love to talk to anybody. My vice chairs will tell you, Beth will talk to anybody in a room. Yes, I will. I'd love to do that. But I think that's true for a lot of anesthesiologists. I think generally we are very supportive people. We are very happy to make the team run, right? That's why we're good at what we do, is because we can figure out what everybody in the room needs, and we know how to play that out to create a successful environment. And that's true for individuals as well. So yes, you have gifts, like Dr. Oakes said. We need you. We want you to stay. And there's a community out there that is willing to help you figure it out and support you. So I'm so grateful that the CSA does this work, because I think if we did more of this and we spent more time on it, we would just be able to remind people how valued and appreciated they are. So I'm grateful to Dr. Lynn for taking this one on today, and just such a pleasure and an honor to be able to join us.
Oh my gosh. Thank both of you. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. And I do think that, we all get so busy that we get lost and we forget. So this was great. And again, thank you. I'm going to sign off now. This has been another episode of the Vital Times podcast for the California Society of Anesthesiologists. I'm Dr. Ludwig Lin, and thank you for listening.